Greetings and peace. I would like to start this with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace be with you and yours. Today's presentation is an in-depth book review and analysis of the book The Forgotten Cause of the Civil War, a new look at the slavery issue by Lawrence R. Tenzer. And I hope you benefit from this, you enjoy it, and I represent myself only. Disclaimer: this presentation summarizes and analyzes Lawrence R. Tenzer's 1997 book, The Forgotten Cause of the Civil War, a new look at the slavery issue. It is presented for entertainment, education, discussion, commentary, fair use review, and free speech purposes. The material reflects the author's arguments and interpretations of historical sources. The presentation does not endorse every claim in the book. Instead, it explains the book's thesis, evidence, and historical reasoning. To be fair, viewers are encouraged to compare the book's arguments with broader Civil War scholarship and primary historical sources. Now, in this book, Dr. Tenzer argues with his thesis that a neglected factor in sectional tensions before the Civil War was the issue he calls quote-unquote white slavery. His thesis centers on people classified as slaves through maternal ancestry, despite appearing physically white after generations of racial mixing. According to the book, fears connected to these individuals, together with debates over slavery's expansion, influenced Northern political attitudes. The work presents this theme as an underappreciated element in the crisis that culminated in war. Now we look at the historiography and the forgotten cause. Now the author, Dr. Tenzer, contends that mainstream Civil War histories emphasize secession, slavery expansion, and Union preservation, while paying little attention to the specific issue of white-appearing slaves. He presents his study as a corrective to what he sees as a historiographical omission. Much of the book is devoted to explaining why the topic allegedly disappeared from later historical narratives. Tenzer attributes this to political sensitivities surrounding race, slavery, and post-war reconciliation. We analyzed the definitions of white slavery, mulatto status, and the one-drop rule. A central distinction in the book is between literal and figurative white slavery. Literal white slavery refers to enslaved persons who appeared white but remained legally enslaved through maternal descent. Figurative white slavery refers to fears that political domination by slaveholders threatened the liberties of free whites. The book also discusses the quote-unquote one-drop concept and historical classifications such as mulatto, quadroon, and octoroon. These categories played major roles in 19th century legal and social definitions of race. We look at the Latin phrase partus sequitur ventrum and maternal status. Now, the legal doctrine partus sequitur ventrum held that a child inherited the status of the mother, right? Just like how Jewish law is, if your mother is Jewish, then you're Jewish as well. Like how we see with Drake, even though he looks like a black man, he's a Jew, right? So this is what this is describing as well. So if a mother was enslaved, her children inherited enslaved status regardless of the father's identity. Tenzer treats this doctrine as the key mechanism through which generations of mixed ancestry individuals remained enslaved. The principle linked legal status to maternal descent rather than visible appearance. Even the current pope that we have, right? He has ancestors from Louisiana, and he apologized for the church's role in slavery. So all connected here. Now we look at the early colonial laws and interracial relations. The book traces the origins of these issues to colonial Virginia. Early laws addressed interracial relationships and established rules governing the status of children born to enslaved women. These statutes became influential precedents throughout the South. Now, the author argues that they created a long-term framework through which slavery could persist across generations of increasingly mixed ancestry. Growth of a mixed ancestry slave population. Repeated interracial relationships between white men and enslaved women produced a growing mixed ancestry population. Over time, some descendants reportedly became visually indistinguishable from whites while remaining legally classified as slaves. The book presents this process as an unintended but important consequence of slavery. It emphasizes that legal status could diverge from physical appearance. Now, the political meaning of white slavery. Dr. Tenzer argues that many Northerners viewed white-appearing slaves as evidence that slavery was not solely a racial issue. He claims that concerns about the institution, therefore, acquired a more immediate political dimension. According to the book, some people feared that legal doctrines supporting slavery could eventually threaten the freedoms of whites as well as blacks. This fear forms a recurring theme throughout the book, the text, and the teachings that Dr. Tenzer is showing here. Now, Chapter 1 basically teaches us about the question of what is a mulatto, right? Now, Chapter 1 explores the historical definitions of the term mulatto and examines how different states classified race. Laws varied considerably, creating uncertainty about who qualified as white, black, or mixed. The chapter surveys legislation, court decisions, and public commentary to show how racial categories were socially and legally constructed rather than fixed by simple appearance. So it's like you have people from North Africa and the Middle East, right? In the American census, they're classified as white. Just an example of what we're looking at here. Interracial relations in Southern society. Numerous travel accounts and contemporary observers are quoted describing widespread interracial relationships in the South. The book highlights testimony suggesting that such relationships were common despite formal prohibitions on interracial marriage. Dr. Tenzer uses these sources to explain the growth of mixed ancestry populations and to illustrate contradictions within the slave system. Skin color, classification, and legal identity. Now, the author, Dr. Tenzer, discusses theories of inheritance and changing skin color across generations. He argues that continual mixing could produce descendants who appeared fully white despite remote African ancestry. This discussion serves as the foundation for the book's claim that some legally enslaved individuals were physiologically and visually white. Chapter 2, looking at white slaves. Now, Chapter 2 focuses on individuals described as white slaves. The author compiles legal references, newspaper accounts, and political speeches that discussed people classified as slaves despite white appearance. He argues that these cases became symbolically important because they challenged conventional assumptions about the relationship between race and slavery. Chapter 3, Racial Theory and the Census. Now, Chapter 3 examines racial theories and the demographic data. Particular attention is given to the census categories and efforts to measure populations classified as black, mulatto, free-colored, or enslaved. Now, the author contends that census records provide evidence for substantial mixed ancestry populations whose existence shaped public debate. Josiah Nott and racial theory debates. A significant portion of the chapter addresses the racial theorist Josiah Nott and related 19th century discussions of human difference. These debates influenced how Americans understood race, heredity, and social hierarchy. Tenzer presents such theories as part of the intellectual environment surrounding slavery and racial classification. Census data and demographic arguments. The book analyzes how census data were interpreted politically. Statistics were used by competing factions to defend or criticize slavery and to make broader arguments about society. Tenzer treats demographic evidence not merely as numbers, but as tools in ideological struggles over the future of the nation. Chapter 4, The Illicit Slave Trade. Chapter 4 addresses illegal slave trading despite formal restrictions. Now, Dr. Tenzer examines evidence suggesting continued trafficking and smuggling connected to the slave economy. The discussion places illicit trade within larger debates over profit, expansion, and the maintenance of slavery as an institution. Economics of slavery and expansion. Economic incentives appear throughout the book. Slave labor, territorial expansion, and competition between free labor and slave labor are presented as powerful forces shaping politics. Tenzer argues that economic realities reinforced social and legal structures, helping sustain conflicts between the North and the South. Chapter 5 refers to the beginning of the end. Now, this chapter examines events that weakened the existing balance between free and slave interest. Political crisis, court decisions, and sectional disputes intensified public anxiety. Dr. Tenzer interprets these developments as steps towards an unavoidable confrontation over the future of slavery. Fugitive slave laws and northern fears. The fugitive slave law, the Dred Scott decision, and related controversies receive extensive attention. The book argues that these measures increased fears that legal protections for slavery could reach beyond the South. According to Tenzer, some Northerners worried that white individuals could be falsely identified as fugitives or otherwise become vulnerable under pro-slavery legal systems. White labor, territories, and nationalization of slavery. A recurring argument is that slavery's expansion into territories threatened free labor. If slave labor dominated new regions, many believed economic opportunities for free workers would shrink. The book links these concerns to broader fears that a nationalized slave system might undermine political liberty and economic independence. Chapter 6, The New White Slaves. Chapter 6 develops the idea of the quote-unquote new white slaves. Here the phrase often refers not only to mixed ancestry individuals, but also to white laborers who feared subordination under a slave-based social order. Tenzer emphasizes political rhetoric suggesting that ownership of labor could eventually replace free labor principles if slavery expanded unchecked. Lincoln, Republican politics, and free labor. Now, the book repeatedly references Abraham Lincoln, Republican opposition to slavery's expansion, and the ideology of free labor. Lincoln's concern about the nation becoming all slave or all free is treated as highly significant. Tenzer argues that preventing slavery's spread was connected not only to moral objections, but also to fears about the future of free white labor. The author's conclusions. The author concludes that white slavery, both literal and figurative, contributed meaningfully to sectional tensions. He presents it as a neglected factor that helps explain shifts in Northern public opinion. Whether readers ultimately accept the thesis or not, the book seeks to broaden discussion of the causes of the Civil War by introducing overlooked sources and perspectives. And that's exactly what it is. I mean, the school is never going to teach you the real history, right? I mean, even look at the current pope that we have apologizing for the church's actions towards slavery, right? He himself looks like a white man, but his ancestry comes from the Louisiana aspect as well, from the Creole. So it's all of this is interrelated. There's a lot of hidden history and hidden stuff that we are not taught, or mainstream, Eurocentric academic sources are not teaching us. This is what I've done with my work in Freemasonry as well, in terms of showing these orders and societies which have Eastern origins and proving it as such, right? So I think the best we could do is just educate ourselves and reclaim the intellectual heritage. That's the best we could do at the moment, right? Because education and awareness is the greatest tools that we have at our disposal. Now, this book is super expensive on Amazon, like $800 something. So for those that wish to know how to access this book, please send me an email and I will tell you how to do so. The academic references are listed below, And these sources include not only this book, The Forgotten Cause of the Civil War, but also sources such as colonial laws, census records, congressional speeches, newspapers such as the Richmond Inquirer, travel narratives, court decisions, and anti-slavery publications. And of course, the secondary source that is used is Dr. Tenzer's book itself. And in this book, even in the bibliography, he lists all of his sources. So it's a very academic and concise book. Again, it's really hard to find, and whoever is selling it super expensive. It is currently available on Internet Archive. So please send me an email and I can guide you on how to access this publication for the purpose of fair use, nonprofit, and education and entertainment and awareness purposes. Thank you for watching. If any questions or comments, please email me at salmansheikh911@gmail.com. My channel, my videos, my works, everything is under the copyright laws of fair use for the purpose of nonprofit, education, free speech, entertainment, and information purposes. Thank you. All rights reserved.